Donald Trump's tariffs aren't just terrible because they are the stupidest economic policy we've ever seen, or because they're crashing the market. They're terrible because they are bringing out the most disingenuous Republicans to defend them in some of the worst arguments I have ever heard. And one of those arguments got shut down and called out for the lie that it is by Bernie Sanders in the Senate, a Trump stooge and trade rep ripped to shreds in a clip I'm excited to show you. But before we get into it, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now, before we get into this clip of Bernie, which you are going to want to check out, it is very therapeutic and also an important call out. I want to see one of the lies that Bernie called out from Howard Lutnick right here.
But in the interim, this takes long. Unraveling globalization takes a long time. This isn't just an overnight fix. And in the interim, prices will go up. You even hear from the president himself, there will be short-term pain. We're going to see in the next few days likely prices going up at the grocery store. What do you say to those Americans who put Donald Trump in office to lower prices, not raise them?
So energy prices down, interest rates down,
right,
your mortgage costs down. Right? These things are energy. The price at the gas pump, lower. Oil down 6-7%. Why aren't you talking about the fact that oil in the gas pump is going to come smashing down? No tax on tips, no tax on overtime,
right,
no tax on Social
That's
Security.
not even in effect yet.
But
these are all coming I just want to drill down on
these
prices.
These are all coming now.
Because as you well know, Secretary, a lot of Americans put Donald Trump in office because they were unhappy with prices at the grocery store.
The narrative that the Trump administration is trying to push about the tariffs is, firstly, that they're going to bring back American manufacturing. That's not going to happen, especially as Donald Trump rips out investments in American manufacturing that we saw under the Biden administration. We talked with Congressman Greg Landsman about this just a few days ago. The other thing that they're trying to argue is that prices will come down. They've already pointed to oil prices coming down, but that's because a recession is coming. We saw conservatives laud the Ford Motor Company for announcing that they were going to be lowering prices because of Trump's tariffs. That's not actually true. They're lowering them, yes, because of the tariffs, but because they know that people soon won't be able to afford cars. So they're trying to get them all off the lot. All of this is based on lies that are going to cost people their jobs, their homes, their retirement savings. And one of the worst lies is what Bernie Sanders called out in this takedown right here.
Let me begin by saying, as I suspect you know, that I am not a great fan of unfettered free trade. I helped lead the effort when I was in the House against NAFTA, against permanent normal trade relations with China. I will never forget a visit that I made to the Macadillo area in Mexico, where I saw brand new factories and literally Mexican workers living in cardboard boxes. And the result, of course, was the loss of hundreds of thousands of jobs, good-paying jobs in this country, transferring them to Mexico where people work for horrendous wages. That is the type of trade policy which I detest. But I want to move to an area to talk about the legal basis of what President Trump has done. President Trump said, Mr. Greer, that he had no choice in terms of Canada. And I live 50 miles away from the Canadian border. He had no choice but to bypass Congress and to impose an emergency 25% tariff on Canada to stop, quote, the massive, end quote, amount of fentanyl and, quote, the millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from the northern border. Unfortunately, that's a lie. The truth is that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported just 43 pounds of fentanyl was seized at the Canadian border last year, representing just 0.2% of the total. Now, we could agree that 1 pound of fentanyl is too much. But if 0.2% constitutes an emergency, my guess is illegal drugs are coming in from every country in the world. And that gives the President of the United States incredible power to determine tariffs. Further, he said he talked about millions and millions of undocumented immigrants coming from Canada. In fact, last year there were 24,000 people, not millions and millions. First question, really, we can argue about tariffs, but why does the president have to lie all of the time in order to make his point?
So, Senator, I would just refute that when the president is talking about the nature of the emergency we have. I mean,
Could you talk a little bit closer into the mic, please?
Certainly. Senator, I would just say, I think you need to look at what the president issued in terms of the order for the legal basis for what we're doing, right? I mean, the president very rightly hit on this issue of fentanyl migration coming from northern southern borders, and it's a real emergency.
Drugs are a real emergency. 0.2%. You can then argue illegal drugs come from every country in the world. If you declare that as an emergency, you're giving the President of the United States unbelievable power. Let me go on that point. Let me mention to you what you probably know. 7 Republicans have joined a number of Democrats on legislation reasserting Congress's ability to play an active role in trade and tariffs. That, on the Republican side, was led by Senator Grassley. And he said, and I quote, "For too long, Congress has delegated its clear authority to regulate interstate and foreign commerce to the executive branch, et cetera, et cetera." He wants to reassert Congress's constitutional role and ensure Congress has a voice in trade policy, end of quote. In the last 2 weeks, all we have seen is reports in the newspaper. Congress has not had 1 ounce of authority in determining tariff policy. Do you think Congress should be completely left out of the process? Or does the president have emergency power to do anything he wants with regard to tariffs?
Senator, my staff has had over 200 meetings with congressional offices in the past 2 months to consult. The president's been very transparent about what he wants to do on tariffs. Congress delegated the law to him to take this action.
Mr. Greer, you can have all the meetings you want. You and I had a nice meeting. But at the end of the day, the president did exactly what he wanted to do without any discussion, formal discussion with members of Congress. He could make recommendations to Congress, that's for sure. Do you really think that he has the power under an emergency degree to reorder the trade world, global trade policy, without any input from the United States Congress?
Sir, Congress gave him this law where if he determines a national emergency, he can take appropriate action to regulate imports. That's what he's done.
You think it's a national emergency that 0.2% of fentanyl coming from Canada constitutes a national emergency?
Sir,
do you?
The president has determined that
do you?
Canada,
I'm asking you.
You're asking me about drug policy. So I agree with the president. If you have China and Canada and Mexico putting drugs into this country at different levels, then that's an emergency. We have to deal with it.
Look, we're not going to argue about the danger of drugs. 0.2, 43 pounds of fentanyl. On that basis, the president can declare an emergency with any country on earth and take unlimited power. That's called authoritarianism.
If this was about fentanyl at the southern or Canadian border, I don't know, wouldn't you say maybe we strengthen the partnerships with those countries? Wouldn't you say we make investments in fentanyl screening? That was a part of the, I don't know, bipartisan border deal that Donald Trump had Republicans kill? What happened to that bill? What happened to that deal? Right? Because Republicans killed it, so Joe Biden and Kamala Harris didn't have that win to run on, so they couldn't secure the border even more, right? But then you would think, well, then Trump would probably want to pass some big piece of legislation on this issue he cares so much about. No, of course not. They don't care about solving the issue. They just want to talk about the issue. All of this, as always, is based in lies. Lies that are costing people. Senator Raphael Warnock called out right here.
About what this is. This is a tax on hardworking families. These tariffs will be a $3,800 tax increase on working people. I want you to think about that and the implications of that at a time when a third of all Americans have only $500 in their savings account. And so people will literally be crushed by what is happening in real time. I can tell you that as I talk to Georgians, they want help. They want a government that understands the challenges of ordinary people. They want help paying for their groceries. They're concerned about the price of saving and buying a house and buying a car. Make no mistake, tariffs will only raise costs and make life harder for middle-class people and for hardworking families. Ironically, the president who ran on a platform to lower people's costs is taxing hardworking people, middle-class people, the working poor, while at the same time they are laser focused on giving a tax cut to the richest of the rich. I think that's wrong-headed. I think it's Robin Hood in reverse. They're stealing from the poor in order to give to the rich. And the people of Georgia and all across our country deserve better than this. In contrast, my colleagues and I are focused on lowering costs. And that's why tomorrow I'm proud that I'll be joining Senator Bennett to introduce the American Family Act, which would put money back into the pockets of families by nearly doubling the child tax credit. 3 months after I arrived here in the Senate, I'm very proud that in the American Rescue Plan, one of the first things I was able to do was to deliver on the expanded child tax credit. It literally cut child poverty almost in half. But we only did it for 6 months because we could not get it extended. We need to reorder our priorities in this institution. We need to pass tax relief for children and for the families that are raising these children. And we need to make sure that the wealthy pay their fair share. Congress has a role in it, and my Republican colleagues need to decide, are they standing with Donald Trump and co-president Elon Musk? Or are they standing with ordinary people?
It is also important to point out, aside from the fact that Donald Trump does not care about the people this is going to impact, he is also acutely focused not on working class Americans, but on billionaires. This all still comes back to billionaires, who Donald Trump can give his carve-outs and his exemptions for when it comes to his tariffs are gigantic corporations. Small businesses cannot go to Mar-a-Lago. Small businesses cannot give Donald Trump $1 million for his presidential library or his PAC. Big businesses can, though, and they will. That'll help them. That'll hurt small businesses. That'll hurt working people. This will lead to more price gouging, and no matter what happens, we are all screwed. That is Donald Trump's tariff plan. I've said this a couple of times. Even if tomorrow he were to announce, not doing tariffs anymore, not doing them, the existing inflation would still persist. The price increases we've already seen, they would not go down. Once companies have you paying a price, they're going to keep you paying that price. He has already screwed us in ways that we will be dealing with for hopefully not decades, but maybe. And so we have to make sure people know what's happening and call it out. We're doing that on this show every single day. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you're stuck around to the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.